news is not just covering the nation. It's covering those, hey, the Cranberry Festival's and such today. It's got everything you need.
Yep. What's going on in Oshkosh? What's going on in Park Falls? What's going on in Hayward? Again, we have a news department scattered all across the state. So Charlie will be joining us after the 9:30 news. Hour number 2, we're going to lighten things up a little bit. PJ Leash is UW-Madison's and Wisconsin's essentially bug guy. He is an entomologist. And I've seen a lot of reports that ticks are worse than ever this season. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Also, the Trump administration looks like it's going to cancel another study on the importance of pollinators.
Because why bother?
Yeah, no one depends on that for almonds or cherries or, other things we eat.
There is a farmer's market that Bridget and I go to every Saturday. And there is a local honey place, and they have a T-shirt that's available that says, "No bees, no food."
It's true.
Very simple.
Yep, pretty simple. So PJ Leash joining us in hour number 2. We will wrap up the show, as we always do, with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it's the Lost and Found edition. So stick around for that. And as always, if you have a thing you think should not be, send it in to Greg and me at janesays@civicmedia.us. JANESAYS, Jane Says, at civicmedia.us. Wanted to start off with this. Again, we're going to be talking about the U.S. bombing Iran over the weekend. After the 9:30 news, we'll get into a little bit more with Charlie Pittman to find out the latest on that and the latest, where we're going from here. Yeah. But we wanted to start a little bit more locally with what's going on in Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's Chris Kapenga. Thank you. We're finally going to say it correctly.
This is I will say this again to his face when he's on the show on Friday, but this is an apology to Dan Schaefer, who on the air said he was pronouncing Chris Kapenga's name incorrectly, because we've been saying Kapenga,
which is not it.
No one has corrected us.
Yeah, that's not it. It's a Kapenga.
Kapenga. Yeah.
Senator Kapenga was on WISN's Up Front over the weekend talking about the budget, but also talking about security of our lawmakers. This is in the wake of the assassination, essentially, of the Minnesota lawmaker and her husband, and the attempted murder of another Minnesota lawmaker and his wife.
Yeah.
And so Kapenga was on WISN's Up Front talking about more security for Wisconsin's lawmakers. Let's play that first clip, Calvin, please, from Sunday's Up Front on WISN.
The security concern, I've been raising that for about the last 4 years. And actually, when I was in the president's spot in the Senate, we researched security systems. We had one picked out, but we just couldn't get enough support within the legislature to get that put in place. And I've been to capitals all over the country. There's not one capital I've been in that we haven't had to go through intense security screenings.
You mentioned your time as Senate President. Back in 2023, you pushed for more security after a man was arrested trying to get a handgun into the Capitol. Governor Evers. You say that didn't go anywhere because of support. Where does that stand now? Are you still having those conversations?
Yeah, I think this will obviously help. I wish it wasn't something we had to have happen, but I actually said that. I'm like, what is it going to take for us to get serious about security? It's probably going to take somebody getting hurt.
So let's just start off with the obvious. We here, Matenaer On Air, Civic Media, we don't believe that violence is the answer. We don't think it's right. Politically driven violence is terrible. We think that anyone in that building and anywhere, period, should be safe, secure, and feel unencumbered by an attacker. That should go without saying, Jane, but I feel like we have to say that.
I agree with you.
But what he just said in that sentence is so, I don't want to say angering, but just frustrating for me as an American. What does it take? Why we don't want to, what it's the reactive nature. We want to be proactive instead of reactive. Every time there is any sort of mass shooting in this country, and that happens a lot, there is outcry. There's outcry for red flag laws. There's outcry for increased background checks. There's outcry for get rid of certain guns, get rid of certain styles of guns. There's a conversation that happens every time. And we are always told by the right and by gun enthusiasts, don't politicize this. You're making too big of a deal of it. It's the Second Amendment. It's our God-given right. It shall not be infringed. Everything is there. And we're simply saying, How many times does this have to happen for us
before
to do
something gets done?
What Mr. Kapinga is saying is what the gun, what's the word I'm looking for? Not gun
lobby.
Not the gun lobby. The people who want to get some reform, the gun reform individuals have been saying for years, decades now, is basically like, what does it take to get some security? What does it take to do something about this issue of weapons? And let's just face it, people aren't running in with axes, they're running in with guns. So he's making the exact same argument that people on the gun reform side have been making for a long time. So now all of a sudden, it's something we need to look at.
Right, because it's them.
Yes.
Because it's lawmakers. It's about our lawmakers, not about our kids.
No.
Not about our kids going to school, having to worry about being shot at school.
Mm-hmm.
That's not that we're there. He's not talking about any of that.
No, and if you want proof that he's talking about specifically about lawmakers, he's not talking about the people. And that's the other thing that's really infuriating. He's not talking honestly about the people in the building. He's not talking about the assistants, the interns, the aides, the cleaning staff.
Right. There's all kinds of people that work in the Capitol.
All sorts of individuals who work in there. He's talking about the lawmakers who need to be protected specifically. And that's true. They should be protected. They need, like, everyone in that building should be protected. And once again, I'm saying the obvious again, but he is speaking about lawmakers in specifically on this one. And that also upsets me because it shouldn't matter what your job is in that building. Everyone should feel safe.
I would say that everyone as individuals should feel safe.
What an amazing idea.
Right?
Yeah.
We have another clip from yesterday's appearance. Senator Chris Kapinga on WISN up front. Calvin, play clip number 2, please.
What Indiana, for instance, it's a great example that I bring up a lot, is that Indiana is extremely conservative and pro personal protection. They allow legislators to carry into the building for protection, which I always do. I always have been armed to protect myself, especially when I'm up in the front in the president's spot. That was, I just felt it was very important. But the general public, they don't need to have their weapons in the people's house. In the people's house, it's their representatives who are elected. That's the voice of the people. And I need to be protected as a public servant, and so does everybody else who's been elected into that spot. We should not be worrying about our lives walking into that building.
So you still want lawmakers to be able to carry inside and on the floor?
Absolutely.
Lot to unpack there.
Did you just hear what he said? Everyone listening right now, watching on the live stream. Did you hear what he just said? He said that his life is more important for protection than the lives of others.
Because he's the voice of the people.
He's the voice. No, he is not. He is the guy who casts the vote. And right now he's doing nothing. We'll get to the budget later. But the people are who are important. And the people's voice needs to be protected. I have so many problems with this statement. So many.
Well, and I don't disagree. Yes, our lawmakers should be able to walk into the Capitol and not have to worry about getting shot.
Mm-hmm.
I think our kids should be able to walk into school
Mm-hmm.
and not have to worry about being shot. I think all of us as Americans should be able to go, I don't know, to church or the grocery store or the gas station or pretty much anywhere and not have to worry about being shot. And the fact that he can stand up there and say that he is the voice of the people when we know the Joint Finance Committee that had 4 meetings around Wisconsin completely ignored the top 3 issue they heard from people.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me that you're the voice of the people.
Well, and also he's designated as he is more important than.
His life has more value.
His life has more value, therefore he should be able to carry a gun into that building. The fact that there's no metal detectors in there is surprising. I will say that.
I don't have a problem with that.
There should be up to the state-of-the-art security in that building, and there should be well-paid guards in that building to take care of it.
Who are trained.
I do not believe that lawmakers carrying guns in their pocket is somehow making it more safe to be in there. I do not agree with that, and I vehemently disagree with the notion that because he is a lawmaker, somehow he has more value. That is ridiculous. That is offensive, and it's stupid. It's a stupid argument to make. Just because you want to carry your personal defense mechanism. It's a gun. It's a gun, sir. People are pro personal defense. It's a gun. You want to carry a gun because you watched a Western and you want to feel like a man. I'm sorry. This is so telling to me what he thinks of the people.
And I just found it immensely tone deaf.
Yes.
I did. I found it really tone deaf. Again, yes, I agree. Our lawmakers should be able to do their jobs without the threat of being gunned down at work. I think all of us are entitled to that.
Absolutely.
As Americans. And if you're going to be the voice of the people, Mr. Kappinga, then actually do what they're asking you to do.
Absolutely.
That's a thought.
Absolutely. And this is splitting hairs here, but we're also ignoring the fact that these two lawmakers and their spouses were not gunned down in the building. They were gunned down at home. That's a whole other argument. Whole other discussion we need to have about this. What kind of security do they need to have off the clock, if you will?
Right.
We can talk about that, but just because you want to carry a gun into a building, don't make the argument that you're more important than the other individuals in said building.
When we return, Elon, he's just going to rewrite history the way he wants it. It's all good, nothing to see here. Stay close. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Sweet Calby on the board. Coming to you from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. You can join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Later on today, 2:35 during the Todd Alba Show. Todd welcomes back State Senator Kelda Royce from the Joint Finance Committee to talk about the state budget. In hour number 2 on Todd's show, a weather edition of What's Worse. Is it the heat or humidity? I'm just guessing.
I'll bet you it's winter versus summer, because I'm seeing a lot of the, especially in Wisconsin, you say it's too hot now. You said it was too cold. Like all that.
Right.
We do it every year. We
do.
Every year we forget that Wisconsin is insane.
It's weather whiplash.
Exactly.
Like just you wait 2 days and it's going to change. Before we went to the break, we were talking about State Senator Chris Kapenga appearing on WISN's Up Front over the weekend, talking about that tragic assassination of the Minnesota lawmaker and her husband. And he would like to see metal detectors at the Capitol, which I don't have a problem with. But essentially, he's talking about how important he is because he is the voice of the people.
Wow. Yeah,
Okay. Cassandra from New London. Wow, I don't have a lot of words for this. How dare you say you are more valuable than my children?
Yeah.
And Sue from Franklin, I watched that yesterday and I was thinking the same thing. They are so inward focused.
Yeah.
What does Jane say? Good for me, but not for thee.
Yeah.
Yeah, security for me, but your kid's 5. They'll be fine.
And if you want to talk to Mr. Kapenga's office, you can go to myvote.wi.gov. You don't even have to be represented by Mr. Kapenga, because he's the voice of the people and you are the people.
You are a people.
So go to myvote.wi.gov and you're going to put in your information. You can find not only all sorts of great stuff on voting, which you should do now before this election, before you might forget, but also on your representatives. You can find out from the president on down to your local school board and common council members. So you can call his office up, be kind, be nice. The person who's answering is either an aide or an intern. So yeah, they're just there to talk to you. But tell them that your voice matters, that you will matter, and he is not more important than you are.
Well, and also if he's the voice of the people, maybe he should actually vote on behalf of what he hears from those people.
Absolutely.
It's just
Absolutely.
a thought.
Yeah, just a tiny idea.
We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I think this is really important.
Yeah.
And I think if you just spend a couple of minutes thinking about this is really disturbing. Elon Musk has announced plans to completely rewrite human knowledge after his AI chatbot Grok, which I've never used, but I see it show up on Twitter all the time. Grok is like community notes.
Yeah.
So if you post something and you go to Grok and say, Grok, is this accurate? Well, unfortunately, Grok has been discounting a lot of what Elon has said as far as it's not factual. So Grok is correcting Elon. We can't have that.
Yeah.
Can't have Grok correcting the most wonderful, smartest man in the world, Elon Musk. So yesterday, here's what he said on Twitter, quote, "We will use Grok 3.5, maybe we should call it 4, which has advanced reasoning to rewrite the entire corpus of human knowledge, adding missing information and deleting errors." So Elon wants to rewrite history. Deleting errors.
Well, honestly, Jay, I mean, let's just be quite honest really quick about it all. He is doing what the Texas school board has done. He's doing what other school boards have done. He is making, but he's saying fancy space words like, I'm rewriting now. No, you're not. You're just going to say that, oh man, white Africans really had it harder than you think.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that apartheid really hurt them too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I should be shocked, appalled. I should be clutching my pearls, but he's really just digitalizing and advancing and making it look cooler what lawmakers, historians, school boards, and other weirdo individuals who just want us to forget about slavery have been doing for decades. And I'm sorry, for over a century.
Well,
really.
right. And just trying to disappear truths.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's disappear things that are uncomfortable, that make us feel badly about our past. We shouldn't ever have to admit that we did things wrong. That's what I see from Donald Trump all the time.
Well, I mean,
who never admits that he's done anything wrong.
No.
But this should be very concerning, especially with AI. And if you've seen some of the AI fakes going around, it's pretty astonishing. So in different chats, I've seen people tell other people, hang on to your books. Hang on to your history books.
what I'm hoping is that while he does his redefining human knowledge in a space age, blah, 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 all my rockets blow up, is that
they blew up another one last week.
I know. I believe that there will be people or groups of people who are just way smarter than Elon. What am I saying? I'm as smart as Elon, who will build systems, AI systems, things that will counter this. Yes, absolutely. I think there are good people out there, and I think they'll put their brains to good work. And while Grok is going to be funded by the biggest weirdo loser, richest man ever, I think there are going to be people who I wouldn't be surprised if that's not already happening, who will produce things that will fly in the face of what he's trying to do, especially in the rewriting of human knowledge.
Something to counter this?
At the very least, and I know it sounds very basic, but you go to Wikipedia, and while people can say, well, it's Wikipedia, but there are dozens of citations on there saying where they got the information, and you can go and find out for yourself. So while this is disappointing yet nothing new, I feel like good people will come to the rescue and be like, hey,
and step up.
Yeah.
Let's hope so. We have news coming up next. When we return, Civic Media's new news director, Jolly Pittman, is going to be joining us. Stay close. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Good morning, Charlie. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, you know what? I got to unmute. I can hear you just fine.
All right, awesome. You sound great too. We come back in just over 4 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. We're looking forward to it.
Thanks. Me too.
Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Sweet Cal B on the board. Coming to you from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. Join us. Call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Next hour after the 10 o'clock news, he's the bug guy, entomologist PJ Leash from UW-Madison is going to be joining us to talk all things creepy crawlies, including ticks. It's supposed to be a bad tick season, so we're going to talk to PJ Leash about that after 10 o'clock. Right now, though, delighted to be joined by Civic Media's new news director, Charlie Pittman is here. Good morning, Charlie. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
Nice to meet you on air. That's a hard one to say, isn't it? New news. The new news.
New news director. You've been with us just about a month here at Civic Media. For folks who don't know, including us, if you want to tell us a little bit about your background, Charlie.
Sure. Well, I've worked in broadcasting since I was an adult, since I was 18. I come most recently from WORT, which is a community radio station in Madison, Wisconsin. Interesting structure, mostly volunteer run and operated. Everyone on the air is a volunteer. So very used to training and running a news department where we also had an hour-long news show.
Wow, that's great. It's a big job. Civic Media has news reporters all over the state. We're going to talk about that a little bit more a little bit later on. But let's just talk with what happened over the weekend, Charlie, from the news department, at least as far as the U.S. Bombing Iran over the weekend. Where do we stand right now?
Where do we stand right now? Well, we're waiting. We're watching and waiting, right? Operation Midnight Hammer was the decision to strike Iran with these bunker buster bombs and these massive ordnance penetrators. Obviously, our listeners heard that when we went live this weekend. But right now, we don't know. We are in the waiting period. President Trump is slated to meet with I believe, the National Security Council later today. The many nations around the world have condemned it or issued warnings, but we don't know.
Well, and I think the other thing that we don't know, the Trump administration has said we completely obliterated their Iran's nuclear capabilities. From what I'm seeing this morning, that has not been confirmed. We do not know that, correct?
Correct. There are kind of aerial maps that you can look at and kind of guess at. These three sites, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, are deep underground, and they have this. I'm waving with my hands, but listeners can't see that, calling attention to the limitations of the medium. But there are these big, they're reinforced with concrete and all sorts of things, and deep underground, so they're hard to reach. It's also hard to tell,
Right.
so we don't know that either.
Yeah, it's not like you can confirm this by sight and just say, yes, everything's been destroyed, because, again, the president had warned Iraqis or Iranians to evacuate. That was last weekend. So they did have the Iranians did have the opportunity to move things. If they took that threat that Donald Trump said you should evacuate immediately, if they took that threat seriously, then they had a little time to move things.
Right. Now, we aired the less than 4 minute address from President Trump on Saturday night, and he claimed that their nuclear facilities had been obliterated. But again, there's no way to know, especially that quickly, and so we don't know what the potential is.
And this is, I mean, it was quite shocking on Saturday night just to get the news coming through all the notifications. And this came on the heels of him essentially saying, I believe either Thursday or Friday, I'm going to give it 2 weeks.
Right. Thursday. Up to 2 weeks.
He's the king of the fortnight. He loves 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks to solve everything. But he said 2 weeks, and then this happened, which obviously means that, I mean, we have to assume they didn't just call on that Saturday to say, go, this has to be worked. Now, I am speculating. I do not work for DOD or state, but for him to say 2 weeks and almost 48 hours later for this to happen, I don't want to say it's miscommunication, but it just doesn't seem like this was handled in the best way.
Hey, we have no idea what is going on behind closed doors with this council. I know that my Saturday night was disrupted. Where were you, Greg?
I was right here running the Racine Raiders game at WRJN and going, oh, no, touchdown. All right, cool. Yay. It's like very much there's no such thing as a quiet weekend or a slow Friday. Every day now it can happen anytime.
News is always breaking.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us, Civic Media's news director, Charlie Pittman, is our guest, and we're talking a little bit about what we know as of today after the U.S. bombed Iran over the weekend. Where are Wisconsin's Republican lawmakers on this? Where are Wisconsin's lawmakers in general on this, Charlie?
Glad you asked that. You can find at civicmedia.us a roundup of reactions from Wisconsin's congressional delegation. It's predictably divided. Republicans mostly endorse it, and Democrats don't, right? And are calling on the passage of an update to the War Powers, the War Powers Act, which would require congressional authorization to go to war or
to take these kinds of moves. Yeah, right. Because they did not have this when he decided to do this over the weekend.
Well, so I watched the briefing yesterday at the Pentagon, and under the War Powers Act of 1973, it says you must inform Congress within 48 hours. But what's new, there's a new resolution in Congress that was introduced by Representative Thomas Massey and also by a Republican from, I believe, Kentucky, and then Ro Khanna from California, who introduced a bill into the House recently, but it hasn't been passed, and it would require express authorization from Congress for any hostility, taking hostile action on Iran specifically.
For those who don't know, Thomas Massey is a Republican lawmaker who came out over the weekend pretty strongly against this move. And now he is in the crosshairs of President Trump, who said he's going to make sure he's primaried and get him out of there, because it does seem like within the Republican Party, or at least the MAGAs, there is some division on whether or not this was the right thing to do.
Right. And so I bring that up because Wisconsin's congressional delegation pointed back to that. We have Representative Mark Pocan saying that this must be passed to block Trump from dragging the U.S. into an unconstitutional war in the Middle East. And we had others on the Democratic side echoing those statements. Meanwhile, Senator Ron Johnson endorsing it, saying we could not allow Iran to become a nuclear power. They were getting too close. They wouldn't listen. They wouldn't give it up. So I support President Trump's action. We had our own expert on Saturday night, Stephen Zunez, a professor at the University of San Francisco. He called this nonsense. He said the idea that there was some kind of imminent threat that required military action immediately was nonsense. He pointed to the fact that we could go back to the Iran nuclear deal, but we don't have that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a deal brokered by the Obama administration, which was in place and seemed to be working. There were agreements, as far as, if I remember this correctly, that our inspectors were allowed into Iran to check on their nuclear capabilities. And then when Donald Trump was elected the first time around, he blew that up. He pulled us out and blew us out of that, took us out of that deal that had been brokered by the Obama administration. It's interesting, though, Tulsi Gabbard was the one who essentially said last week that there were no signs of an imminent threat. She did not go along with Donald Trump's assertion that it had been verified that they were ready to, that Iran was ready to take a move. And now it looks like Tulsi Gabbard has been kind of X'd out of everything.
Yep, I don't have much to say to that, but she has now flipped and said that Iran could produce nuclear weapon within weeks. So we're going back and forth.
And back to Senator Ron Johnson, he was on Fox News, either it was yesterday or it might have been this morning, because that is his favorite place to be, and essentially said that this bombing now has done, he is even more resolved now to do more cutting in the budget bill. Because what they want to cut for Medicaid and SNAP and all of that stuff, that's not enough. Now that we've done this, he wants the cuts to go even deeper.
This is a very weird path to go from bombing Iran to Medicaid cuts. One of the things I want to talk about really quick, and you both brought this up as far as the divide in the Republican Party, is that, it's not just the lawmakers. I remember listening to the Tom Hartman show here on Civic Media, and a Republican called up and said, while he is a MAGA Republican, even this is giving him pause. And when the world stage is saying we don't like this, it is going to be interesting to see how President Trump will square this to the American public in the face of his own party isn't on board with this. So,
but nothing like that ever makes him change his mind.
No, I know.
He just doubles down on it and says he's right.
I didn't say it will change his mind. I said it's how he's going to sell it.
Well, let's talk about whether this is popular with the American public. Anecdotally, we had our reporter from Wisconsin Rapids, Melissa Kay, out there on Sunday, and there was sort of an impromptu protest against this action. She talked to people there, and some told her that this reminded her of when President Bush said there were weapons of mass destruction, right? And is the child of parents who heavily followed that. That has a deep and lasting impact on folks watching the United States potentially commit itself to yet another war.
Well, and you bring up a really good point. And George W. Bush and all of his advisors told the American people they had weapons of mass destruction. That's why we needed to go to war. And after how many years and how many lives and how many millions of dollars?
Trillions.
They did not have weapons of mass destruction.
Yes.
So Melissa found a little maybe not necessarily swallowing the administration's claim that Iran was on the brink of attacking us.
Yeah, she talked to the organizer who said it was a spur of the moment call to action and that they were just too furious about the bombing of Iran they wanted to do something. So, not that there haven't been protests before in Wisconsin Rapids, but another thing to add to the protest list.
And I think that's when we were speaking anecdotally, that's something that was very much on social media this week, and is, pictures of George Bush saying there's WMDs and Donald Trump. But also the other thing too, that, and I said this on Twitter, was that during both his debate with now former President Biden and with Vice President Kamala Harris, he made it so clear that these two are going to be the ones that get us into war. These two are going to put us in the crosshairs of World War III. And I just found it very interesting that Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. And while we did give them munitions, we gave them resources, we gave them money, support, We never got involved in that war in almost 3 years of Joe Biden's presidency. It took us 3 months, less than 6 months, to get into now what seems like a war with Iran, which is something that has been on the stage for a long time. That's something that people have really feared. They've been pushing the notion of war with Iran.
Well, and again, you said it correctly, Greg, in that Donald Trump said that everyone else was going to get us into World War III. He's the peace president. Maybe not so much. We're going to continue our conversation with Charlie Pittman on the other side. She is the news director here at Civic Media. Stay with us. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
All my babies coming home tomorrow. Ain't that good news?
Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Dr. Slide on the board. Coming to you from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. You can join us. Call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. We do have baseball action coming up later on today. Our broadcast starts at 6:05. Crew hosting the Pirates. You can listen live on terrestrial radio to WRCE in Richland Center, WISS in Oshkosh, WRJN here in Racine and Kenosha, WCQM in Park Falls, and WBZH in Hayward. They have Lumberjacks next month.
Oh, we should talk more about that later.
We should maybe go there.
Maybe.
Our broadcast with baseball starts 6:05 today. The Crew hosting the Pirates. Right now, we are joined by Civic Media News Director Charlie Pittman is here. And Charlie, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Wisconsin budget.
Yes, here back at home. Okay.
You're back
All right.
at home. What's happening? What's happening in Wisconsin?
Well, your guess is pretty much as good as mine here too. I feel like I'm showing up and saying I don't know, but
Nobody knows.
I can help to get you to where we are at this point. So last week, there were the Budget Legislative Committee, the Budget Writing Committee, had a bunch of meetings and some planned meetings. Not all of them materialized. So take us back to last Thursday. It feels like so long ago.
It does.
The Joint Finance Committee was scheduled to meet, and it had some big ticket items on its agenda. And they canceled right before the meeting started. So that threw us a bit akimbo.
And this was after, because we talked to some child care providers who either closed their daycare centers or worked out special arrangements so they could drive 3 hours to get to Madison to attend this meeting. And then our lawmakers, being gracious as they are, just canceled it at the last minute.
Right. And this was after a week of delaying the Joint Finance Committee by several hours, I believe. It's all kind of a blur, but I never quite entirely trust that these meetings are going to start on time or will happen at all. So so that's where we were. We saw a statement from Devin LeMahieu that the direction that we're headed, that Republicans felt they were headed in a direction taxpayers couldn't afford. Now we hear from Tip McGuire, a Democrat who's also on that committee, saying, look, you're giving into the desires of your most extreme legislative caucuses, and that's a quote. And he's pointing to this internal disagreement in the Republican Party. So first we had budget talks between Democrat Governor Tony Evers and the Republican leadership breakdown. This last week and coming into this week, we have internal disagreement within the GOP. There are two state senators, both Republicans, who say they're not, or have gestured that they're not going to vote for the budget, for a new budget. And they are, Senator Chris Kappenga and State Senator Steve Noss, Republican from Whitewater.
Yep.
Right. Two slightly different reasons. Kappenga had previously said that he wasn't going to vote for it because he believes the existing budget should carry over. In a kind of thread following his reasoning, he says it would be the lowest spending increase in a decade and that there would be no risk of Governor Evers' veto pen. And so that's why he says he's not going to vote for it. And then there's State Senator Steve Noss, who has repeatedly come after kind of the GOP leadership and everyone to say that this quote might be the worst process used in all of his time in the legislature, unquote. So the worst budget process. So we have two kind of disgruntled Republican senators who, you know, because there's a slim majority, Republicans need those two to get to a deal. So again, we don't really know, but what comes after this, right? Well, we have rumors swirling last week of an $87 million cut to higher education funding, UW-Madison. That's a cut when Governor Evers had proposed an $850 million increase for the Universities of Wisconsin or UW system. So we don't, that's a huge disparity, and trying to square that, I think, is a difficult thing.
And this sounds like the federal level too. You have Ron Johnson saying, "I don't like this budget," and it's not because he wants to put more money in to help people. Like, we need to cut more. We need to cut even more. This program's going to get gotten rid of. And Chris Kapenga is really just the human version of this whole process. Going, let's just do the old one. That's fine.
And I just find it interesting that at least some of our lawmakers believe that they can take no action. They can do nothing. Again, after the Joint Finance Committee traveled around the state, 4 different stops, hearing from hundreds of Wisconsinites about the top issues that are important to them. But our Republicans apparently feel secure enough that them not doing anything is going to be just fine with everybody.
Well,
it's going to be just fine.
Chris Kapenga, who said we should just wait and do nothing, is also the man who said in that same upfront interview that they are the voice of the people. So apparently the people say, don't do anything, just it's fine, it's all good to go. It's very disappointing to see this kind of gridlock and see the finger pointing that's happening.
If you would like our lawmakers to do something, you can always reach them in a real handy-dandy way. Go to myvote.wi.gov, myvote.wi.gov. Just put in your address. All the contact information for all of your lawmakers will appear. You can always give them a friendly, polite phone call. Check in on what they are or are not doing in Madison. Charlie Pittman is the news director for Civic Media. She's going to be joining us every Monday. Thank you so very much, Charlie. Really appreciate your time, and we will see you next week.
Thanks so much.
We have news coming up next, and then we'll return, talk all things creepy crawlies with PJ Leash, the bug guy. You're listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Ain't that news? Man, ain't that news? I can't wait to get a home where we can finally be alone. Disconnect my telephone. Ain't that good news? Man, ain't that news? Ain't that news? Ain't that good news? Man, ain't that news?
Good morning, PJ. Can you hear me all right?
Hey, I can, yes.
All right, awesome. We come back in about 90 seconds.
Okay, sounds good.
Good morning and welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Calvin Butenoff coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. You can join us. Call or text at 855-752-4842. You can also leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. He is known as the Bug Guy. He heads up the entomology lab at UW-Madison. PJ Leash is here. Good morning, PJ. It's been way too long. It's like been months and months and months since we had you on the show. How you doing?
Good. It definitely has been a while, Jane. I know we connected last year about all the craziness with the periodical cicadas, and that's kind of a blur for me at this point. But it's great to be back.
Glad to have you back. I know that we're going to start with ticks.
Yeah.
This is expecting to be a really bad tick season.
It is, and for me, the tick season has really been going on for several months already.
That seems like way too soon.
Well, it does. I mean, one thing I have been seeing, especially the last couple of years, we had that mild El Nino winter 2 years ago, and this last winter was kind of wimpy in a lot of regards. We didn't have a whole lot of snow where I'm located. And folks kind of let their guard down. They think, in their mind, it's December, it's January. I'm not thinking about ticks. I'm thinking about Christmas decorations and New Year's and stuff like that. And I found quite a few folks will stop giving their dogs, their outdoor pets, that preventative flea and tick. And then all of a sudden they're contacting me in late January saying, hey, my dog's got fleas. It's been warm enough. So when we aren't getting those kind of cold, classic Wisconsin winters, some of these things are becoming active a little bit earlier. You could potentially bump into them.
I mean, I never, I don't care what the temperature is. Maybe I'll get her flea and tick medicine on the first of the month, every single month. And to me, that's crazy that people would think, well, it's not hot. And we don't live in the woods, of course, either. So why would we? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's January. You think I'd let my dog out? They're going to pick up fleas. It's January.
Right. And I mean, generally the risk is going to be pretty low that time of the year. But like ticks, for example, if it's about, above freezing, maybe it's 40 degrees or thereabouts, you can potentially bump into ticks. So my general mindset is if there's no snow on the ground and it's above freezing, you better be at least thinking about them. Pets should be getting those preventative flea and tick treatments. Make sure you're checking yourself and kids and grandkids and stuff like that, because ticks are not something you want to mess with.
Well, and there really isn't, PJ, a good way but even staying out of the woods isn't enough to protect you from ticks because they're kind of everywhere.
They are showing up in more and more locations. And it's really interesting to me because the tick situation, this is really something that is an emerging health threat in our lifetimes, because the first deer tick, and when I think of ticks in Wisconsin, we've got different species, but there's like the common one folks call the wood tick, also called the American dog tick. If I were going to pick a tick to be bitten by, it would be that one, because I know the disease risks are very low from it.
Yeah.
It's the deer tick that we have the most concerns with. Everyone has heard of Lyme disease, but there's other diseases they carry: anaplasmosis, babesiosis. There's even some viruses, very, very rare at this point. Lyme seems to be our biggest threat, but our first deer tick wasn't formally documented in the state until about the late 1960s, early 1970s. Fast forward today, and they've been found in essentially every county in Wisconsin. So in my mind, we're kind of watching that big bang, or, that rock has been thrown into the pond. The ripples are still expanding, and we don't know fully when that expansion is going to stop. And so you go back 30 years ago and you'd think of, a hunter, an avid hiker out in the woods, they've got to worry about ticks.
Right.
Now we're starting to see ticks pop up sometimes in backyards in suburban areas and stuff like that. And that's a concern.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a really elementary question, PJ, and it's about that, what you just spoke about, the discovery of deer ticks. Was it a matter of they always existed and we didn't know them, or it's something that it was a new species of tick that we discovered in the 70s? Because I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I can't tell you exactly when, but I just remember there was a time before Lyme disease and deer ticks, and then that's all you heard for a very long time.
Yeah.
Is that what happened? Is it like they evolved into a new species, or we just didn't know about them and all of a sudden we discovered them?
Yeah. So if you go back to the 1960s, 1970s, when we were finding our first ones, if you wanted to find that species, you'd have to go way south of us, places like Texas and stuff like that. And so what had probably happened over time is ticks were getting carried up on birds, or, long distance migration of mammals and things like that. And there's some interesting things that can go on when you have movement of species, be it ticks or other things. Let's say in theory, you move a lone male from somewhere else and you put a male of that species here in Wisconsin. That's the end of the story.
Of that tick, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What if you moved a female? Well, if she had mated, could there be a possibility? Yeah, but you also have to have the right density of ticks. If in theory I moved a male of a species to Kenosha and a female to Douglas County, they're never going to find each other.
They're never going to meet, right.
So you need enough of these things being moved in for them to be able to find each other. And once they do that, if the conditions are right, they can basically get a beachhead, so to speak, or get a foot in the door. Then they can start a population and start increasing their numbers.
If you're just joining us, PJ Leash is our guest. He is known as the Bug Guy. He heads the entomology department at UW-Madison, and we are talking ticks because ticks are a growing concern all across the country, essentially.
And so I'm someone who I went camping once and I found 2 ticks, one on my leg, one on the back of my ear, which, wow. And what do people do in, there's one thing to avoid them. We can talk about that, but like you go camping or you're out in the woods or you're out in your backyard and you find a tick on your leg. What is the next step?
Yeah. So the next step, if you find one on you, is going to be to remove it. Now, if it's just crawling and it hasn't bitten you yet, that's easy. It just, grab it. And I probably wouldn't take it I probably wouldn't even squish it per se, because if there's pathogens inside the tick, if you had a little cut on your skin or something like that, I wouldn't want to deal with that. I would probably wrap it up in a tissue, put it in a plastic bag so you can seal it, and put it in the trash, or put that bag in the freezer to kill it. If you happen to be taking a shower and you find a tick on you, flush it down the drain or something like that. But I wouldn't take it and just toss it back on the lawn, because they're long-lived creatures.
Right.
And that brings up an important point, because ticks differ from mosquitoes. We know some mosquitoes can carry diseases, and mosquito lands on you, they bite you, they don't feed very long. When ticks feed, it's very different. It's a long, drawn-out process. They actually insert their mouth parts, they kind of glue them in place, and they might be attached for several days or upwards of a week. So it's not a fast process like mosquitoes. Also along those lines, when a tick like a deer tick transmits Lyme disease, it takes quite a while. They really need to be attached for about 36 hours, so about a day and a half before transmission can occur. And that's why, in my mind, one of the single best things you can do as a precaution is to do regular tick checks. Because if you're out playing in your yard or hiking or camping, maybe you had a tick on you, but if you know, oh, it could have only been on me 3 hours or 6 hours or 12 hours, even if it has Lyme, because you've removed it in a relatively short span of time, it hasn't been on a day and a half, your risk goes down greatly to basically zilch. So they really have to be attached. So I generally remind folks to do a tick check at the end of the day if they've been outside, or if I'm going somewhere where I know there happen to be a lot of ticks, I'm probably doing a tick check as soon as I get back to the car or as soon as I get home.
Yeah.
Because that's a great precaution to really, really reduce your risk.
When we found the one in the back of my head was gone. Like you could just flick it right off.
Yeah.
The one that was in my leg was buried. And what we did was we took clear nail polish and we just brushed right over it.
So
and
it can't breathe?
It can't breathe, suffocate it, and then and then getting rid of it was a challenge because it had burrowed its head into my leg. And I went to the doctor, everything was fine. But it was just that thing of like, I had just heard of ticks. I was not educated on that. And when that happened, I started to freak out. And so that is good to know that, that I did not know that until right now, that the transference of virus or disease takes a little bit longer. So the tick checks are very important.
But PJ, going back to the best way to get it out is nail polish or Vaseline, or what do experts recommend?
Yeah, so the best thing is simply to use tweezers or forceps. Grab it as close to the skin as you can and just a slow, steady pull.
Yeah.
We don't want to do anything that may be pretty traumatic to the tick. I've heard of things that when I was a kid, this was circulated. You burn it with a match or something like that, or you crush it. Well, if that tick does have some sort of disease or pathogen, are you potentially introducing that because you're causing a lot of trauma to the tick? So, a slow, steady pull is probably going to be your best route of action for that.
Okay.
Ask him nicely. Could you just back out of there? That'd be I really appreciate that.
Go on my neighbor's dog. I don't like that dog.
Go over there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room.
Yeah.
The other thing too, though, we're joking about this, but Lyme disease is very serious. For folks who have had Lyme disease, that is not a joke.
Right. Yeah, very serious disease. And we do know some individuals can have, kind of longer term problems. In a lot of situations, if it is detected and caught early and treated with a course of antibiotics, folks usually respond pretty well for that. And actually in some parts of the country, like the upper Midwest where we are, and also New England, those are, if you look at a map of Lyme disease cases, those are the two areas that glow. And so medical professionals will basically, for those parts of the country where you have lots of deer ticks and Lyme disease, if you are bitten by a tick, and it's been attached for a day or two and risk is increasing, often a doctor or physician will prescribe a short-term course of antibiotics because we know that works very well. If you basically hit it early, it doesn't have time to cause problems in your body.
Because from what I understand, sometimes, unfortunately, it can take several diagnoses to get to the point where they recognize that it's actually Lyme disease, which can be part of the problem.
Yeah. And there's Lyme disease, and there's actually a couple related microorganisms. There's anaplasmosis, babesiosis, and sometimes the symptoms can be a little bit vague. Not everyone gets the classic bullseye rash that we hear about for Lyme disease, or if you have maybe darker skin, it's just hard to see that rash and it gets overlooked. Then those symptoms can be kind of vague, aches and pains and things like that. And so it can sometimes take a while to get a formal diagnosis.
Or be attributed to something else.
Yeah.
We're going to continue our conversation with PJ Leash. He heads the entomology department diagnostic lab at UW-Madison. He is known as Wisconsin's bug guy. We have a question for you on the other side. PJ from Helene from Muscadet. That is all coming up. Stay close. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Takes a swing, man. She can't hurt. She don't mean no harm. She just don't know what else to do about it.
Good morning and welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Dr. Slide on the board. Coming to you from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. Join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. You can also leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Coming up a little bit later on today, Maggie Dawn's show from 4 to 6. She's going to be talking to Ilan Berman from the American Foreign Policy Council for a follow-up after the U.S. bombed Iran over the weekend. What does this mean for Wisconsin? Join Maggie Dawn this afternoon from 4 to 6 across the network. We are joined right now by Wisconsin's bug guy, PJ Leash, heads up the entomology diagnostic lab at UW-Madison. And before we went to the break, PJ, we were talking about ticks. And we had a question from Helena in Muscadet. What about adding nematodes to my yard?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. So pretty much everyone has heard of nematodes or roundworms. So these microscopic, pale, worm-like creatures, common and ubiquitous in soil around the world. There are certain nematodes that are associated with plants, some with animals and things like that. And so there's a small group of nematodes we call entomopathogenic or insect-killing nematodes, ticks and things like that too. There's been some work in the laboratory looking at, using some of these. And if you put a tick in a petri dish and put in the right type of nematodes, they can become infected. What I haven't seen really demonstrated would be the kind of the field study aspect of that, to be able to put these nematodes out on your lawn and have them make an actual difference. And I think what would be most important in my mind is getting at the question of, yes, do you kill some ticks? But if you do that, does that make a difference for human health? If we apply these, are we seeing a significant notable reduction in cases of Lyme or something like that? So again, right. I haven't seen that sort of thing from the field aspect. There's still work going on the biological control of ticks. I will say I also have some colleagues here at UW-Madison, Dr. Susan Paskowitz, who's our medical entomologist, and she's got a big lab group. They do a lot of tick research, very, very active in that regard. And they have been doing some studies just using like over-the-counter granular lawn-type treatments you can get from the hardware store. And it's been showing some good results in terms of cutting down tick numbers. So there are some options out there. We are seeing more and more companies offering tick control services. And in my mind, you don't necessarily have to treat your entire lawn, but let's say you have a situation where maybe you live in northern Wisconsin. So you've got some lawn around your house, then you've got the woods.
The woods, yeah. The
high risk area for me is going to be kind of the edge where your lawn meets the woods. Usually a lawn, if it's open and sunny, that's often too dry. It's not great habitat usually for ticks. They like more of the vegetation, holds in more moisture. And so if they're in the woods, they may wander into edges of yard. So we know there's some research where you could use a little bit of a granular product, kind of treat a band, like a perimeter at the edge of your yard, and that may help the ticks from moving in. So that way, if you have, say, a kid's swing set closer to the house, risk is going to go down in locations like that.
I had read somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, do possums eat ticks? Because I might just get a possum.
Oh, so there's this idea out there that possums are just like Hoover vacuums going around sucking up ticks.
Horrible things, yes.
Yeah, I've done some digging on that, and I have not really found, a strong scientific backing for that. And what some of this may come from, and the same kind of thing comes to, I hear about like guinea fowl on occasion, these chicken-like birds. And some of this goes back to like laboratory studies where you have some animal, a bat or a chicken or something like that, and you say, oh, when we provided them, it ate 5 ticks in this span of time. Therefore, if we extrapolate, they could eat 1,000 a day or whatever it may be. I have looked at papers in the scientific literature, like, folks have captured possums for studies or looked at roadkill ones and look at the gut contest just to see what they're eating. And it's not completely full of ticks or anything like that. So again, this idea that possums are just out there hoovering them up, I haven't seen science to back that up.
There goes my Olive the opossum.
Well, Jane,
I'm going to adopt.
if I've told you once, I feel like I tell you this every day. If you want to get a possum, buy a possum. Just remember, you will officially be the lady with a possum,
The
in
possum
the neighborhood.
lady.
So
That's probably not good. Cindy from Appleton. Cindy, we only got about 90 seconds left. Thank you for joining us. Did you have a question for PJ? Cindy, go ahead. No, apparently not. Cindy cannot hear us. Cindy, you can always call back if you want, but again, we got about 2 minutes left. PJ, we're not going to have time to delve into this too deeply, but the state of our pollinators is still really serious, is it not? We should be planting lots of flowers in our yards.
It is. I mean, we've been hearing about this for years in terms of bees. And usually in the news, what we get bombarded with is news about honeybees, which really important agriculturally, but they're not native. And as humans, we can raise them as colonies. We can split them into 2 colonies, increase their numbers. What is much more alarming to me are all our wild pollinators. We've got about 500 species of bees in the States. So if you take out honeybees and bumblebees, we've got 475 or so other species that often just fly under the radar. Folks don't recognize what they are. A lot of them might look wasp-like and be mistaken for something else. But then there's all the beetles, flies, butterflies, moths, which often get a bad rap. Those can be critical pollinators too. And we're seeing issues with those as well. And really, we're hearing more and more rumblings about general insect declines. And what's scary to me, I mean, we know agriculture and land use changes play a role with this, but scientists are seeing in kind of pristine wilderness areas compared to 30 years ago, drastic declines in numbers and diversity of insects, which is really scary to me.
Well, they might be creepy crawly, but we need them.
We need them.
We need our bugs.
Yes, very much so.
We're going to get you back before another 6 months go by. PJ Leash is the Wisconsin bug guy, heads up the entomology diagnostic unit at UW-Madison. Thank you so much, PJ. We'll have you back soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Jane.
Appreciate your time. News is coming up next when we return audio sorbet. We lighten things up for the last half hour of the show. Stay close. You are listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Sometimes it all comes together, baby. Sometimes you're just a fool in love.
Good morning and welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Dr. Slide on the board, coming to you from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. You can join us. Call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Brewers hosting the Pirates later on. Our broadcast will start at 6:05. And you can listen to the game on terrestrial radio in Richland Center on WRCE, WISS in Oshkosh, WRJN here in Racine and Kenosha, WCQM in Park Falls near Butternut, and WEZH in Hayward.
They also may have a chance to just go to a game.
Yeah.
They need to listen to here on Free Ticket Fridays.
Free Ticket Fridays,
Exactly.
absolutely.
And I'm just thinking about baseball because I need to go. Sorry.
I'm surprised you haven't been yet.
Oh, me too, Jane. Me too.
Maybe this will be the week. But our broadcast starts tonight at 6:05. The Crew hosting the Pirates here on Civic Media. This is the portion of the show where we try and lighten things up and take a little break away from the news. We call it Audio Sorbet. A cleansing of the ears. Just so we can all take a breath and maybe have a couple chuckles.
We're going to get in them ears and clean them.
We're going to do that. So this came up last week.
Yeah.
We didn't get around to this, but here is the question of the day.
Yeah.
Do you still balance your checkbook? 855-752-4842. Do you still balance your checkbook? That's our audio sorbet question for today. 855-752-4842.
And if you place your hand upon your ear and listen to the west, you can just hear all the people under 40 going, "What?
They do what? You did what?
You do? Oh, my Mima has a checkbook."
But now you know someone.
I know. Well, I don't just know someone. I know someones.
Some ones
Yes,
who
so-
are younger.
No.
No.
No. So one older,
Okay.
one younger. That
Okay.
was so. I was hanging out with my mother-in-law, wonderful lady, Patty Becker. What's up? And she was talking about still balancing her checkbook, and it's just something she does. It, of course, it does the job it's supposed to do, but it's also like it makes me feel better
Yeah.
thing. Understood.
I like to know where all my pennies are, and this is one way I can do that.
I do not balance my checkbook. I do not own a checkbook. I do not write checks. If I pay everything online, and the only thing I would ever pull checks out for, live cashier checks, were for rent, because I had landlords in the past who would hold on to rent checks for a while.
Yep.
Until he got all of them, and then
that
boom.
would really screw up your balance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't deal with it. I mean, fine, do your thing, but I just sort of attributed it to like, oh, my mother-in-law is almost 80. Of course she balances the checkbook. She loves Lawrence Welk. It's adorable. Then my friend who is I'm 3 years younger than me shot up and goes, "I still balance my checkbook too." I'm like, oh, I'm the one who's out of place here right now.
You're the one.
I am not of the cool, because Jane, you know how like bell bottoms always come back and records are now back with quite ferocity.
Trends return.
Yeah, people are listening to cassette tapes again. I don't know why. Maybe balancing checkbooks is the new cool retro thing to do.
Oh, could be.
Could be.
It could be.
I mean, that would mean
We
you have
are
to
embracing all kinds of retro things.
that would mean you have to go to a bank. I don't mean just like text your bank. You have to walk into a bank,
Go into the physical bank.
order checks, wait for them to be delivered. They're not just going to be like, "Oh, here's your digital scan copy
No,
of checks." It's
no.
it's a process.
It
And
is.
once you get that big folder of checks, then someone has to teach you how to write a check, because I guarantee you a lot of people don't know how to write
That's
checks.
really interesting. I
Yeah.
never thought of that.
It's an involved process. Like, you got to get all the information correct, or else you never know.
So we got two questions going.
Oh,
do
boy.
you know how to write a check? And do you still balance your checkbook? 855-752-4842. 855-75-CIVIC. Todd from De Pere, listening in Green Bay on WGBW, says, I do balance my checkbook, but I use Excel every day.
Okay.
Rich in Wisconsin Rapids, listening on WAUK. Yep, I've been balancing for 51 years.
There you go.
Good for you.
I was never I was given the great gift of financial literacy from a very young age. Not always responsibility, because I'm, But financial literacy, I started writing checks at a young age.
Right.
I started having being responsible for my own money at a young age. But what's funny is that my parents never sat me down and said, all right, we're going to teach you how to balance your checkbook. That always felt like something adults did. I started writing checks probably in my early teens.
Wow.
Because I had my own checking account.
Okay.
And of course, it was supervised by my parents. But like, I never learned how to balance a checkbook. Plus, it's also math, which at that age was like, no, thank you.
I'd rather not.
I'll just be broke.
I'd rather be surprised.
I'd rather write a bad check than do mathematics.
Do you still balance your checkbook? Do you still write checks? 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. There are a couple of things I still write checks for.
Like what?
The city of water department.
Yeah.
I write a check to them quarterly.
Why do you do that?
Because it comes in the mail.
See,
and I pay it.
I get my little card in the mail I think we pay it every other month.
Okay.
I have a dashboard set up online, and I get an email saying your water bill is available, and I literally pay the water bill the moment I get it, because the first time I got a water bill, I paid it. Then the second one, I just forgot about it, and then the next water bill was like twice as much, and then I realized that. But
it's an unpleasant surprise.
I do not write checks for that. No, I just don't write checks. I just don't.
And I did balance my checkbook for years and years and years.
Do you do what Roger from Stevens Point does? He monitors his checking account through his app.
See, now I just check the bank website.
Exactly.
And that's where I know where I am.
I have,
but I do not fill out the physical check recorder anymore.
No,
haven't done that in a long time.
I have the same thing. I check my app all the time, and also I get notifications on my phone that say, your account has been debited. There's been a spending on your account, and everything matches. So if something, even honestly, Jane, if it's like if I go to Quick Trip and buy a soda for $1.05. It's telling me $1.05 has been spent.
Yeah.
So I always know what's going on.
855-752-4842. Audio sorbet today is, do you still balance your checkbook? Do you still write checks? Roger from Stevens Point. I monitor my checking account weekly, so I balance my checkbook through my bank's app. Jan from Oak Creek. I balance my checkbook every day online for security and because I must. I have gotten in trouble many years ago not keeping a good track of it, and I have learned I must discipline myself to do it every day. I don't write checks, though. I do carry one in my purse, just in case.
Yeah.
And I keep the paper and pencil ledger of my checkbook, too. Good for you, Jen.
Yeah.
But again, good for you for recognizing that you got in trouble because you weren't paying close enough attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, honestly, like, we always hear stories of identity theft and whatnot, but there are stories out there of people just like someone getting your information, spending $35 on something, or it's those small, like they can get in there and
those little definitely,
and also fees are out there, and it's a good, the question of do you balance your checkbook is one that is fun to talk about, but it really, that financial literacy of your account, being vigilant and looking at whether it's in your checkbook, whether it's online, whether it's going to the bank and asking for a printout of your history, which they will do for you.
Yep.
But yeah, Jan, that's very, very good stuff to do. But yeah, I don't think I can't. Yeah, there's no way I'm going back to checks. No, thank you.
Not for anything.
Well, most of the places I go anyways don't accept them.
Yeah, and you hate to. Well, for one thing, you hate to be the person at the grocery store pulling out the check with 4 people behind you, because you will hear the collective groan.
Do they even still accept checks anymore?
I think it depends upon where you shop.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe in smaller communities. Mike, Calvin, do you even know how to write a check as our resident young person?
I'm slightly offended by that, but I'll take it in stride. Yes, I do know how to write a check. I have a checkbook. That being said, the last time I used it was probably paying rent in college, so it's been a couple of years since I've even used it.
Wow.
That, Calvin, I was not expecting that answer at all. So you have every right to feel insulted by that, because, I mean, honestly, at your age, and there's a lot of landlords out there who accept Venmo or will do direct bank transfers and things so I would absolutely assume that not only would I assume you didn't have a checkbook, but you wouldn't know how because young people don't.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. It's not something you need to do to survive.
See, and maybe that's a generational thing too, because the whole Venmo thing just makes me twitchy.
I don't think it's a generation thing. I know plenty of people your age who are on Venmo.
No.
Yeah. Why?
Because no.
Why?
It's like we are so automated and so I just know.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Have you ever bought anything online?
Perhaps.
What's the difference?
There's a little lock in the left-hand corner.
You think Venmo is just like it's like some guy named Steve going? He goes,
his name is Steve Venmo.
Hey Calvin, you got to pay Jane. I'll give us some money. You pay me back later.
It's just the newer technologies. I'm gonna wait. I want to sit back a little bit and watch
Venmo
this.
didn't come out last month. It's been around for a long time.
Not for a decade.
Almost. Those peer-to-peer paying sites have been around for a while. I'll make you a Venmo site. It's secure.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want it
because
I'm not going to use it.
You sound like my mom.
Can't make me.
Sound like my mom when CDs came out. She's like, I won't need CDs. I have all these tapes. And then a month or two later, she's like, I bought the Beatles' White Album on CD.
855-752-4842. Do you still balance your checkbook? Do you still write checks? Kurt from Eau Claire. I have had a checkbook for 46 years and never balanced it.
Yeah.
I write checks now because I refuse to pay convenience fees. And now with the internet, I check my Friday every week on Fridays.
That's a great thing to
really
do.
Smart.
That's very, very smart.
Yep.
Convenience fees. And I never thought about that. They'll charge you fees no matter what.
If they can.
Yeah, exactly.
Cindy from Appleton is on the line. Good morning, Cindy. Thanks for joining us. What do you want to say about this?
Well, Venmo. What's Venmo?
Oh, stop. You've heard of Venmo, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy.
I'm serious. I have no idea what half of these things are. And I do like you, Jane. I go on my account and online just about daily to make sure, everything looks kosher. But I'm starting to feel like I'm being discriminated against. And I'll give you a little story from this weekend.
Continue.
Okay.
Continue.
I was down in Fort Atkinson for an event Friday night, and on my way home, I'm doing this 30 Trails Challenge with the Fox Cities Greenways. So I stopped at the Glacial River Trail, rode about 6-7 miles on that, and then I went up to Jefferson and got on the Glacial Drummond Trail. And when I got to the Glacial Drummond Trail, there was no place to pay anything except with a QR code. I don't have a smartphone. I can't use a QR code. So I called the office number, and I said, what am I supposed to do? I don't have a way to do this. I'm an old lady. I don't believe in all this crap. And so she said, well, nobody's going to do anything. Don't worry about it. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, when I get home, I'll make a payment online, which is what I did. But I'm like, this is baloney.
You are such a good person for doing that,
I think
Cindy.
it's so
good
funny.
for you.
I do not have a smartphone. I'll go online at home and do it.
Because she's a good, responsible human being. Well done, Cindy.
You both are silly billies.
That's great. All right, when we return, we're going to wrap it up with This Shouldn't Be a Thing, the Lost and Found edition. Stay close. This is Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calvitini on the board, coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. You can also leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Coming up tomorrow, Todd Alba, our friend and colleague and host of the Todd Alba Show. From 2 to 4 across the network, he is going to join us at 9:35 to talk all things news. Maybe we'll have some movement on the Wisconsin state budget. Yeah, probably not.
No.
Nah, I don't think so. They're just going to walk away from it. But anyway, Todd will be joining us tomorrow in the first hour at 9:35. So I hope you can join us for that. Right now, it is 10:53 Calvin. That means it's time for...
This shouldn't be a thing.
As always, if you have a thing you think should not be, send it into Greg and me at janesays@civicmedia.us. This is from UPI.com. Ben Hooper, our hero.
Ben Hooper back, baby.
With the byline. Headline reads, items left on British buses include bales of hay and a frozen turkey.
What?
British transport company Megabus sharing some of its most unusual lost property that people leave behind on their buses, including hay bales, a frozen turkey, a wok, and false teeth. Now that you would think would jump out at you.
I mean,
you would need those unless you got an extra set.
I'm just imagining you're just taking your teeth out and putting them in the chair next to you.
Or in the little pouch thing.
A seat you have not paid for. It's illegally riding.
Your teeth?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel bad for the person who forgot the frozen turkey because they got off and they're like, and as the bus is pulling away, they're like, oh, Meemaw's going to kill me. I had one job.
But that you wouldn't think that you would miss that? Like, I got onto the bus carrying a frozen turkey. I am leaving the bus without something.
Okay, I will defend this on one point.
Okay.
How often are you carrying frozen turkeys?
Never.
Okay. How often are you carrying your purse? More often, you'd say?
Yes.
So when you get off a bus or you get off a...
Because it's not a regular thing.
It's not a regular thing. You may not think about it. And a bus can be like, I got to get off the bus. Like, I understand why you'd forget something very unusual because you're not used to it being there in your life. Therefore, you're watching the bus drive away.
I think you're being very generous.
I'm being very generous because we've all forgotten that thing where we like...
I can't believe I forgot that thing.
My friend left a comedy event once to go get a mic stand because the mic stand was gone. He went back to the club, got the mic stand, walked into the building without the mic stand in his hand. So I can understand why you might forget something that unusual.
Happens.
Exactly.
It happens. We're talking lost and found on the British bus company Megabus. Other items found in May include just in May, Winnie the Pooh stuffed toy, a jar of honey. Would have been nice if it was sitting right next to Winnie the Pooh. A Radiohead vinyl record.
Which one?
Insulin.
Oh, God.
An electric razor, a Neil Diamond CD, a collection of historic coins and stamps.
Oh, boy.
A guitar.
Tell me more.
And a single shoe.
It's like, you ever like driving, Jane, and you just see a shoe on the freeway?
Yes.
Like, how did that happen?
Yes, I went to a college with a woman who said that she claimed it was snow pigs. That was because we would always see them. You always see one. You never see two shoes lying by the side of the road. You see one shoe.
But snow pigs, what are
snow
those?
pigs. It was they're invisible. You can't see them. They hide in drifts, and then they come out and grab one shoe. That was her explanation. Well, yeah, it was college.
So this is just me. Jane, we could do this monthly. The monthly report of Megabus.
From Megabus?
Lost and Found. Because if this is just May.
I know, just May. In years past, they have found 3 bales of hay, which are big. Hay bales are big.
Yeah.
Family tree documents, a frozen turkey, false teeth, multiple single shoes and socks. Megabus says about 95% of lost and found items are eventually returned to their owners.
Really?
Those that go unclaimed after 28 days get donated to charity. Anyone who loses an item on a Megabus is encouraged to report your lost frozen turkey on their website.
Oh, great. You've donated a right tennis shoe.
I know.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yes.
Megabus. You're
That-
helping the good
That
work.
really helped a lot.
I really hope there's a June report.
We'll go back. We'll
Yes.
double check and see what
We'll request Ben Hooper to do this.
when Megabucks does their next report on June.
How amazing would it be if we could get Megabus on the show monthly to talk about their lost and found?
We can try and make that happen.
Amazing.
We have the power.
We do.
All right. That wraps up today's episode of
This shouldn't be a thing.
Also coming up this week, Jim Santel will be back on Thursday along with Brittany Merlot. A little weather and wine. We still have this heat warning in effect, I believe, until 7 o'clock tonight.
Yeah.
So please be careful. Keep an eye on yourself and your neighbors and especially your pets.
Mm-hmm.
Good time to let the dog, I don't know, chase the tennis ball in the house.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Yeah.
And then maybe
it's too
storms
long.
coming in tonight, so hopefully that's going to clear out here a little bit.
Cool. Hot rain.
All right. Thank you, Greg and Calvin, and all of our engineers, because without you, nothing works. And thank you most of all for calling and for texting and for listening. It means the world. I hope you find some joy today, even if it's just a little bit, and you have the chance to share it. Keep it right here. News coming up next, followed by Tom Hartman from 11 to 2 across the vast, statewide, countrywide. Take us global on the app, the Civic Media Radio Network, and we'll see you tomorrow.